Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is your host Maverick, bringing to you episode 7 of Your Lie in April. So, last episode, Kousei pretty much resigned to the fact and accepted he was going to be entering a piano competition, playing, of course, one of Chopin's etudes, wrong notes, and of course we got a lot of, these rom-com shenanigans as well. We got all his flirting around, if you will, with Tsubaki and Kaori and whatnot. And so that was all fine and dandy. The things also got a little bit more serious with the introduction of what I presume are some of his rivals from his childhood as well. So potentially we're going to see that into this episode. Well, I say potentially, but here I actually have to inform you guys of something. So, sadly, this episode is not going to be a blind reaction. So, I actually recorded this already, the whole way through, and then for some reason, I can't find my footage anymore. I don't know, I must have accidentally deleted it, or something. Anyways, I just don't have that footage anymore, so I'm gonna have to record it again. Now, however, since this is going to be my essentially second time doing this, of course it's not going to be blind anymore. So this episode in particular will be, I guess, a little bit more unique than the others because I'm essentially watching it the second way through, and so maybe I'll just interject my comments or whatnot within the episodes. So my apologies. I'll definitely make sure not to let that happen again next episode, but for this one, well, I guess you'll just have to listen to my commentary over the actual episode. Alright, so without further ado, let's just get into it right now. Alrighty, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Right. When I first saw this scene, I was like, okay, this dude definitely has some mental problems. Of course, I only later learned, I believe it's within this episode, that he originally had a cat, and that actually was one of the cause of some of his trauma as well, I guess you could say. And the second thing I was thinking of was whether or not this cat had anything to do with the cat in the opening. But as it turns out, their eye colors are different. Yeah, this one. But of course, they're not, right? So, anyways, let me skip this real quick. I'll see you guys in a second. And back. Aww. Seriously though, having a last second shot, like, if only football events were as exciting as this. And oh, actually number 11 is my number as well. I actually also played football in college. Or soccer, if we're using the American terms. We mostly played 5-on-5 though. And of course, the part where, act strong in front of people, but then breaks down by himself. Unfortunately, in high school, you probably have to prepare for college. At least that's how it was in my case. Definitely. Well, actually, to be fair, you gotta do that in middle school as well. At least in Asian countries. Right, and then here, of course, yeah, he can already play it, but can he make it his own? Now, the thing about this part, though, that I was kind of intrigued about, viewing at this the second time, is, in his past, he's always been, especially trained by his mom, to be completely conforming to the music, right? So, by all means, for the past him, this should be enough for him already. So, this means that sometime between this, he has already changed, right? Like, where exactly is him in all this? He's trying to give his own touch onto this composition. So I don't know if this is something that he's wanted to do all along, even since he was a child. Is this something that he started to feel more and more about since his mom died? Or is this something that he's been thinking more and more about ever since he met Kaori? You know what? Watching this the second time, I suddenly realized this is how later on Kaori made the reference to Kousei liking sweets. And of course, for a pianist, hands are absolutely valuable. So here I'm actually thinking, since that time, did he already want to rebel against his mom, against his mom's ways, and whatnot? Or was that, like I said, was that the day that he resigned himself into accepting everything? Mom. Not just sometimes. I think a surprisingly overwhelmingly amount of times. Charlie Brown. Like seriously though, or Kaori. Yeah, and I think she must have known who Kousei was even long before. And perhaps even she was inspired by him, maybe during her past. I don't know. I'm just throwing some very some speculation out there. You know, I actually thought that there was actually something that they maybe missed that was very important or whatnot. And it turns out just to be Carrie's way of cheering him up. House shell number 265. So basically, those numbers are so Koshel, or however you pronounce it, he basically organized all of Mozart's works into numbers. And so the number that he assigned that specific composition was 265. I wonder if he actually knew in that, or is he just like, anyways, that's what his mom wants, so he doesn't really care about all that. This part was definitely kind of funny, but not to be unexpected. See, uh, the thing is, though, in lots of competitions, I'm sure they still have some sort of scoring for expression. So, then again, the entire concept of musical competitions has been under scrutiny for a while. So I'll talk about this a little bit more in the review section. I mean, at the same time, don't you guys think it's kind of funny that in, childhood Arima, Kousei looks like he's like 7 or 8 or something. But since he's in middle school right now, and I believe third year of mid school, so he should be 15 now. That means 2 years ago he was 13. Or is she talking about like some other time? Oh well. Right. And so, anyways, my initial reaction to this was that this definitely doesn't sound like Chopin, but I wasn't exactly sure what this is. So later, I researched it and I found out it's actually one of Bach's. Well-tempered claver, I believe it's called. It's actually quite a big thing. And the second one, shoot, I forgot already. Not that interesting, honestly. This part also intrigued me, especially afterwards, when I knew how how much of a big shot, I guess you could say, that dude actually is. See, like, what is that growth spurt within 2 years? Like, what the hell? Aiza. Yeah, Aiza. Like, I mean, he's the former champion, right? He's the champion of last year. And yet, he's still, you know, getting a nerves there. Now, I did like, however, during this scene where it sort of calls back to, yeah, what Kaori was talking about, faking it till you make it. Like, I like that entire part here, right? So, how it's a reference to Kaori's works. It's just that later on, once I knew, that he's already won this before, that's when I started thinking, wait, so why is he still so unsure of himself? He doesn't need to fake it anymore. He's already made it, right? I mean, I guess a defending champion also has their own pressure as well. I'm definitely not denying that. But the thing about this is the pressure's coming from something else. I see. And of course, right before we can hear him play, it's ended. Alright, anyways, let's get to the review part. Alrighty, well, let's just get into it, shall we? As again, this episode, it wasn't really done blind because I already seen this one before. I just lost the footage, and I'm also doing the entire review part again as well. So let's just go for this, right? So as usual, let me talk about the music first, and so on and so forth. In terms of the music, again, I want to first focus on the competition part, and especially in regards to what the characters were discussing within this episode, right? And especially, again, in terms of expressing the individuality or your personal take on the music versus playing it exactly by the book, by the sheet music, right? Of course, like I said, you still need to have a certain amount of expression within the music as well. I'm sure that most all judges would still take this into account to a certain extent. They're not literally expecting you to play like a robot, right? Now, however, what they're saying does ring true to a certain extent, and this goes into the criticisms of musical competitions, classical music competitions in general. So in Kousei's situation, I think we can touch on 2 points. Number one would be in regards to the style and manner of playing, right? So, again, judges are typically these competitions are scored by a panel of judges. Well, we've seen here already. There's multiple judges here, and since art is subjective, music is subjective, right? And so the way that you play, maybe you play a very maybe you play fast and with virtuoso and whatnot. Maybe you play more softly and whatnot. Maybe you have your own personal take on the music, right? Now, this typically generates different responses from different people. Some people would like it, some people would hate it, and so you would get these conflicting opinions, right? And so one of the criticisms of musical competitions in general is that generally the most inoffensive person would win. And so if we go into here, it ties into the conception that because Kousei is playing directly by the book, he's literally playing it in the most inoffensive way possible, right? Like, nobody's going to disagree that this is how it was supposed to be played, and so that is why he can get the overall good score to be the winner, right? So this is one of the criticisms of classical music competitions that's been said many times throughout already. Whether it's valid or not, I don't know, but I'm not one to judge, right? But that is sort of the reference, I guess, that they're trying to make in regards to real-world classical music competitions. So that's number one. Number two, and what is again another criticism of these competitions, is that there is the I guess there is a good amount of under the table win trading going on. And again, this is maybe just this is just hearsay. I'm not literally part of the industry, right? However, I've seen enough people from within the classical music world come out and say stuff like this that I do believe this is true to a certain extent, and I can certainly believe this. And what happens here is that basically all of these judges are pianists themselves, right? And typically they are teachers as well. And so what happens is that, so even though you can't vote, so say for instance there's two teachers that are on the judge list, right? Or And so let's call them Judge A and Judge B. And so Judge A's student is actually playing in this competition. So typically, what within the competition rules, Judge A will not be allowed to score on his student, right, to avoid bias, and that makes reasonable sense, right? Now the thing is though, Judge B also has students as well, and typically the judge committee, the judging committee is actually pretty small, and so all of the various different piano competitions that or other musical competitions that we're seeing, they're basically judged by the same groups of people, right? And so even though in this situation Judge B might not have his student here, there can easily be a situation where Judge A says to Judge B, okay, please vote for or give my student a higher score, and then maybe 3 months later down the line within another competition where Judge B's student does actually attend said competition, Judge A will accordingly give a high score to Judge B's student as well. So there is this, this process of nepotism, I guess you could say. Is that the word? Nepotism? I believe that's how it's pronounced. Within the, I guess, musical community, if you will. And of course, there's also, that's not taking into account, there's also these other kinds of situations where maybe, Judge A would say, okay, so you, potential candidate C, for instance, okay, you have some promise. However, I'm not. Even if he performs very well, Judge A would still actually purposely give him a lower score, and he would go up to said candidate and say, "Hey, I actually think you have a lot of potential. How about coming under my tutelage, and I can eventually get you somewhere as well. I can allow you to get a higher score," and so on and so forth. Again, under the guise of actually actually training him and making him better in terms of these competitions, but in actuality, maybe it's just putting him under his wing so that eventually he can also be, vote traded, win traded, score traded, well, however you want to call it, into the later stages of a competition in the future, right? Now, especially if you go back, this is especially relevant within this episode because, again, Kousei, he comes from a piano family, right? So his mom is also a renowned pianist, and whose teacher is actually also one of the judges here. One of the major judges during in a lot of these competitions. I mean, not literally at this competition, but within other competitions as well. So it's entirely possible that that people might resent Kousei for having this kind of affiliation as well. Just okay because of his closeness to the the higher ups or the the esteemed established people within this close knit circle, that people resent him and say, oh, he's he just has this added advantage as well. I'm not sure if this anime is going towards that route, because obviously we do know that Kousei does have the skill to back it up, but that's not going to stop people from muttering about it behind their backs, right? Out of jealousy, out of, blinding hatred, yada yada. So these two are the main criticisms of classical musical competitions in general that I feel are maybe relevant to this situation. Now, of course, that's not to say this is the only criticism of these competitions. There's actually a lot more. Such as, for instance, basically encouraging people to having to have a set repertoire. For instance, already, if you guys recall a few episodes ago, once I knew this was a piano competition, I can instantly say, okay, we're probably gonna see Chopin, and then later on we're gonna see some, Beethoven as well, and then eventually at the very end we're probably gonna see some Liszt, right, and maybe Rachmaninoff. And if it's violin in the other case, again, that's the repertoire, right? And this is expected out of all the different competitions. So some people resent that. They say, okay, so maybe I just want to be a Chopin specialist. I just want to be a Vivaldi specialist, for instance. I don't want to necessarily know of all these works or play exceedingly well all these works of these different virtuosos. So that is also one of the criticism here as well. And of course, lots more as well. But I'm not going to get into that right now because they're not entirely relevant to this anime in particular. Oh, I guess one other thing that I can quickly mention in regards to criticism that I feel like might be relatable. So there's also this feeling within the classical music community that these competitions essentially work like sort of qualifications for you to actually pursue a classical music career, right? So say for instance, think of something like a job qualification. You need to have a certain certificate or certain trained skills, and to provide proof of said skills, like a diploma from a university, for example, to say that, okay, because I have this, I'm qualified for this job, and then so I can be hired for it. Now you might say, hey, so that's not entirely a bad thing, right? Because it's a job qualification, and if these pianists really do want to become professional pianists, shouldn't they have qualifications as well? And I guess that is true to a certain extent, but then again, we're talking about jobs versus art, right? This is an artistic kind of profession. Is it really something that should be quantified in this kind of method? Right? So, I guess, I like I said, I'm not actually part of this entire community, so I'm not really in the in any position to comment much, but I'm just saying, I just like to relate this to some of you guys to let you guys have a better understanding of the stuff at hand a little bit more. Boy, that took a lot of time already, and we haven't even got to the pieces that were played for this episode. So, just quickly, briefly mention. So they played one of Bach's pieces, the Well-Tempered Clavier, and also one of Schubert's pieces, one of his piano sonatas. Now, honestly, Franz Schubert, I don't really listen to much of him. Again, even though I've had lessons on the piano before, I'm by and large, in terms of classical music, more leaning towards the violin kind of violin side. So I can't really talk much about Schubert here. In terms of Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier, how should I say it? This is honestly, I didn't know this as well. So again, because this is more of a keyboardist or pianist kind of work, but I did find it interesting. So maybe as a point of trivia for you guys as well, why exactly is this work noteworthy, and what does well-tempered clavier actually mean? So actually, this goes into sort of musical theory as well, but I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. Basically, all the instruments nowadays in modern times are tuned to a setting which we call equal temperament, right? So you don't need to understand what that is, just know that it's named equal temperament. In the time of Bach, actually, there was this new type of tuning that came out that's called well temperament. And before that, they were using something called mean tone temperament and whatnot. And so, again, I don't want to get too much into the musical theory and stuff, but basically, what it is that it's basically tuning an instrument to a different ways of tuning an instrument so that it sounds different. I guess is the best way I can say of it. And well temperament that Bach's time used and equal temperament that modern time uses is actually very similar, except that well temperament, which is during Bach's time, it had a more specific kind of individuality to each of the keys within that kind of tuning. So by keys, I mean something like C major, C minor, D, A major, A minor, or anyways, you guys know what I mean. So it would have more, it would have its quirks, right? Because it's not as equal of a tuning as equal temperament. So there were some specific nuances within each of the different keys within that tuning. And so because of this, Bach actually wrote the well-tempered clavier. Clavier in this context means a sort of keyboard instrument, not necessarily piano, maybe the harpsichord, maybe other keyboard instruments as well. So he's basically saying, okay, to celebrate using this new kind of tuning method called well temperament, take a look at what you can do with this kind of tuning. And so he wrote basically a composition in each of the different keys and to celebrate this, right? And so that is what is significant about this work as a whole. And well, yeah, that's basically your bit of trivia for this. So again, not really relating much to this episode, if we're entirely honest. I just thought it'd be a nice piece of trivia for you guys. Okay, so anyways, let's leave the music part aside for now and talk a little bit about the episode at hand, right? Honestly, I don't have much to say about this episode except for, you know, the part where Kousei and Kaori were in the park and then they were, you know, doing the hand thing and all that. And I'm just like, come on. Kaori is definitely flirting with Kousei, right? If that's not flirting, I don't know what that is. And again, I already mentioned sometime there as well, but again, I absolutely do feel that Kaori probably knew of Kousei long before this, and she specifically approached him with a specific goal in her mind. Whether or not she was actually, you know, she actually has feelings for him or whatnot, honestly, I can't really tell right now. Like, is it before or after knowing him, or is it something that's going to develop later? I'm not in a position to say right now. That's something that I still need to observe a little bit more of, but definitely she knew of him way before this. And well, I don't know, I feel like their relationship is definitely something. It's probably not as one-sided as Kousei thinks. Let me just put it that way. And again, don't spoil this for me. I still like to enjoy it as it develops later on, and so on and so forth. But yeah, that part to me felt like, okay, I'm almost blushing at Kaori's assertiveness here, right? So yeah, that about covers it for this episode. I think I talked a little bit too much in regards to musical elements, but then again, we were focusing more on the musical stuff for this episode as well. Anyways, also in regards, oh, I guess one final note is again back to the boy, you know, the rival, right? The former winner. Last year's winner of the competition. So I'm actually wondering what his goal for entering this year was, right? I mean, it's probably not specifically directed toward Kousei, because there's no way he could have known that Kousei would attend this year, right? Yeah. So maybe he wants to defend his title or something like that. I don't know. I guess we'll learn more about this in the next episode as well, and probably the girl will also play. Okay, here's what I'm guessing. Probably the boy and the girl, you know, Kousei's self-titled rivals, are going to play next episode, and then we're gonna see Kousei get up on stage, and then right before he starts to play, probably next episode will end. That's my prediction for next episode. So anyways, that was episode 7, and I'll see you guys next time as well, hopefully in the not too distant future. So until then, bye bye.